Potete iniziare a contare da 1 a 5, Raffaella.
Good afternoon. I am Sister Raffaella Petrini, a Franciscan sister of the Eucharist, and a member of the Faculty of Social Sciences of the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, the Evangelical in Rome. I am very happy and very honored to be part of the economy of Francesco, and I would like to thank the university for welcoming us here today and let us be connected live from this beautiful campus. In our journey of preparation towards today's event within the Women for Economy Village, a few of us decided to spend some time together reflecting upon which principles would be more significant to us in the new social encyclical of Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti. As all social encyclicals, Fratelli Tutti intends to present the Church's response to the ethical questions raised over time by human societies. However, we try to identify together which aspects are key to enhance women's participation and full recognition in a truly human-centered economy, and which attitudes women can nurture within society to promote a renewed sense of universal fraternity beyond borders. So we decided to read the encyclical through the 3 phases that characterize the Catholic social teaching approach: see, judge, and act. The first chapter of the encyclical, which is very rich, allows us to see where we are by looking also very realistically at the paradoxes of our culture, the struggles, the pain engendered by the pandemic, the dark clouds, the Holy Father says, which obscure a world that tends to close in on itself. So we look around and see shattered dreams of unity and peace, a growing loss of the sense of history, what the Holy Father defines as the constructionism, that is, human freedom claims to create everything starting from zero, instead of learning from mistakes and building upon our heritage. Spreading despair, discouragement, a permanent state of disagreement and confrontation. And you can see that even in our media, in our social media. A throwaway world where what, or worse, who, is no longer useful, is no longer needed. So we see wars and conflicts and persecutions, the Holy Father says, a mentality of fear and mistrust that fosters a culture of walls. Inequality of human rights also, which particularly from our perspective between men and women. Lack of solidarity and ability for interpersonal encounter. Progress and economic growth without a shared roadmap, that is to say, oriented by a short-term vision that does not allow us to sacrifice or plan for the next generations. The pandemic, of course, which is a worldwide tragedy that has exposed our common vulnerability really everywhere. In the illusion of communication, the Holy Father says information without wisdom, where I can too quickly separate dislikes from likes and isolate myself from the real world, because digital connectivity, we know, is not capable per se of uniting humanity. So these are the dark clouds that the encyclical so well exemplifies in the first chapter. And yet, despite the dark clouds, the first chapter of the encyclical ends emphasizing hope, a hope that is rooted in the human heart and can open up to great ideals, because hope, Pope Francis says, makes us all capable to look beyond our own personal convenience. So if the first chapter allows us to see where we are, the second chapter leads us into the phase of judgment. The Encyclical provides us as women as a model by which we can judge what we see, I believe. That is the Evangelical parable of the Good Samaritan. I am sure that most of you probably are familiar with the story. Along the way of his journey, the Good Samaritan comes across a man who has been assaulted, injured, left on the wayside, and many simply pass by that man. He is the only one willing to stop, to care for him, and to provide for his needs. So this is very relevant for us because there are signs, the Pope says, that show when a society is not healthy. A society that seeks prosperity but turns its back on those who suffer is precisely a society that is getting sick. So the parable poses a very basic question, I think, to each one of us, men and women alike. When confronted by human suffering, we are called to decide every day, in many ways, what kind of people are we? Are we people who care, or are we people who just pass by? Once we make that decision, then it is time to act. And the next chapters of the Encyclical outline for us various ways to do so, not offering necessarily technical solution, because this is not what Catholic social teaching does usually, but guidelines for a better kind of economics and a better kind of politics. Although here, of course, we have a very limited time and we can't reflect upon them all, but I would like to say that caring for those most vulnerable is the first action to take. This is a very feminine attitude, actually, as women are physically created to care for life in its earliest stages, nurturing it to full development within their own bodies. Therefore, women are called in a very special way to protect the most fragile in every dimension of the human existence: family, market, politics, social life. Caring for fragility, I would say, is an integral aspect of the common good. It builds relationships of trust and reciprocity that are at the core of the human fraternity the Holy Father speaks in his Encyclical. And this requires a woman's capacity to choose priorities while being multitasking, and we all are, even sisters are very multitasking. It implies a personal change in our lifestyle against the throwaway culture. It entails a deeper awareness that being in the long term is more valuable than doing or functioning. And this is a paradigm of care that allows us to recognize our own dependence on others. Because I think the foundation for social charity is really this recognition. And social charity is a building block of the new architecture of peace, the Holy Father defines it. This paradigm of care, there's something very interesting about that, I think, can also counteract the manipulative logic of what has been defined the technocratic paradigm. That is to say, that tendency to approach others as external objects, assuming that they can be changed, transformed, and adapted to personal needs, basically, or at least to perceived personal needs, as one would with technology, so irrespective of any limits. Such capacity of recognizing the vulnerability of those who pass by, as well as our own vulnerability, is truly necessary for authentic social dialogue. And you know, women are naturally very good at developing networks, I think. But this type of dialogue also implies what the Holy Father calls for as a renewed manner of communication, which can happen even through social media, but cannot tolerate aggression, insults, verbal abuse, violence, because it's a dialogue that rather seeks to engage in listening, in respectful listening, and interpersonal encounter. So I would say that social dialogues begins by rediscovering a very basic value, which is the value of kindness. Women, through their maternal instinct and natural capacity for self-gift, can actively cooperate in building peace as authentic mediators and not just intermediaries. This is a difference that the Holy Father makes in the Encyclical. By uniting and not dividing, by retaining nothing for themselves, but rather spending themselves generously to bring forth new life. To open paths of dialogue and to embrace and not turn their back on those who suffer. A key aspect of social dialogue is dialogue between men and women, very fundamental, which must be rooted in equality and yet, I believe, open to diversity. The book very clearly states that a great work still needs to be done so that the organization of societies worldwide can reflect the truth that women inherently possess the same dignity and identical rights as men do. And the Holy Father is very clear and strong in saying that it is not acceptable that persons are denied their rights simply by virtue of being women. If you remember, even the document on human fraternity that was signed in Abu Dhabi by Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar last February 2019, a document that in many ways began to address some of the themes developed by this encyclical, even that document stated it very clearly. Efforts must be made to modify those laws that prevent women from fully enjoying their rights. So fraternity is definitely rooted in the truth of equal dignity between men and women. And thus justice is an essential condition for achieving universal fraternity. Social charity, in fact, demands justice. Yet, one of the main themes of this encyclical is also openness to difference, because difference is mutually enriching, is an expression of multiple gifts and multiple talents, is creative. It involves the ability to respect the other's point of view, the Holy Father says, and to admit that it may include legitimate convictions and concerns. In this sense, some have pointed out very well, I think, that fraternity is one step beyond solidarity, because it not only allows the unequal to become equal, but it also allows the equal to embrace the different. And let me mention here, particularly as a Franciscan sister, that St. Francis of Assisi experienced fraternity in its fullness by way of his friendship with a woman, St. Clare. She was truly a precious source of support and friendship for him, even in his suffering. She shared his call to witness to fraternal love, celibacy, and shared this mission to rebuild the church, although in a very complementary, very different, more contemplative way. First and foremost, I think she shared with him a very profound love for humanity in its diversity. Therefore, I would say, I think we can say that Francis and Clare could be considered like prototypes of the capacity of men and women to come up with shared goals that transcend their differences and allow them to engage in common mission. Fraternity between men and women, a new alliance between men and women, the Holy Father would say, is the foundational base of social friendship. And social friendship offers us as women a key to open our closed world in two directions, both horizontally towards one another and the environment where our existence unfolds, and vertically towards God, the Creator, on whom we are all ultimately dependent. So as we together, as men and women, continue to battle against the COVID-19 virus, we should also feel engaged in another fight against another virus that is equally difficult to eradicate, the virus of individualism, Pope Francis says. And this demands a deeper understanding of solidarity, of service, of gift, of thinking and acting as a community. It demands a heart open to transcendence that only through a process of education can be shaped, trained, and made capable to see the goodness of the other. Fratelli Tutti, I believe, certainly offers a very rich contribution to this process of education, inviting us to restore human dignity to its central place, especially as in the economy of Francesco, we rethink together of economic priorities, and we really have been doing this for several months now, and the ways in which our modern societies should care for their members, and especially those who are most vulnerable. And now, I would like to leave some space for a more informal dialogue to some of the members of the Women for Economy Village. And I would like them to speak their insights from lived experiences in their families, their relationships, their professional work, their different cultural environments. And I would like to introduce them today. I would like to introduce who's with us today, because we have 3 women, but we also have a man with us today. We have Diletta Pasqualotto, who's an MBA in leadership. Olena Komisarenko, who is a graduate student in economics and management at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas. We have Sara Echeverri Rodriguez, professional in microeconomics and quantitative analysis, and Luca Federici, law and communication expert. So let's go back for a moment to the first chapter of the Encyclical, where the Holy Father is very strong and clear, as I said before, in pointing out the dark clouds that obscure our world. And we know that only by acknowledging where we are, as hard as it may be, we can make decisions about change and move into the future. So I ask Diletta, please, would you like to share your insights about this topic?
Thank you, Sor Raffaella. As you explained very well in your introduction, in chapter 1, we have a perfect description of the reality of the world. In all the context of the world, there is an evident dark cloud that hides love, peace, truth, and all the good values that God has given us. And from this dark cloud, a polluted rain falls into the world and create racism, a throwaway society, disequality between men and women, and so on. We like very much, as the Pope writes, the words democracy, freedom, justice, and unity. But how do we humans apply these words? Democracy works until it doesn't bother my finance and my space. Justice helps me upon the moment I find an escamotage at the expenses of others. Unity is a cool word to use on social media and not in real life when my neighbor needs my economic and tangible help. Freedom makes me feel alive, but it's not up to me to defend the freedom of my brothers living in countries full of conflicts and wars. These factors have the same common denominator, individualism. The Holy Father writes, we are more alone than ever in an increasingly massified world that promotes individual interest and weakens the communitarian dimension of life. I was born in a privileged environment, in a privileged country. But this doesn't mean that my world is fair and just. I need to support my young sisters who think they can't achieve some goals just because they are girls. I need to advise my sisters who have to choose between staying home with their kids or growing professionally. I need to help my sisters who are in abusive and violent relationships. I need to stand for my sisters living far away from me who are undergoing genital mutilation. I need to act, and I need to be concrete to help my sisters. We all need to act. We all need to recognize that still, all over the world, men and women don't have the same dignity and identical rights. In some part of the world, the role of women in the professional environment has been improving, yes. But there are still women who are carrying all the weight of householding, child rearing, and career just because of some stereotypes, just because the work environment is not welcoming women's needs. As a result, according to the latest study in social science research, women have been penalized with lower wages and lower benefits. Moreover, look at this pandemic situation. According to the up-to-date Italian statistics, out of 100 jobs lost, 55.9% are women's. Society seems to not understand the importance of women at work. In fact, Rosario De Luca, the president of the Foundation for Labor Consultant Studies, states that women make a significant contribution to employment in terms of qualification and competence. And he adds that in the intellectual professions, 54.5% are women. The Holy Father says that an economy that favors productive diversity and business creativity needs to be promoted. So why don't we restructure the working organization so that women can grow professionally and at the same time raise their family? Why don't we restructure the working organization so men can spend more time with their children instead of leaving all the child rearing to mothers? Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first female president of Liberia, said, "Once the glass ceiling has been broken, it can never be put back together." And so, to break the glass ceiling, I here present you Equal Value, one of the projects created by Women for Economy Village. We are creating a label to certify that companies are compliant with transparency and are committed toward gender pay equality and equality in family leave. Do you, employers, believe that women and men have the same value? If you're transparent and offer equal salaries, your company will receive our label. However, if you're still lagging behind, we will offer you a tailored service to evaluate the gap, analyze the issue, and implement adequate policies. We are creating an organizational ethos that balances finances with person-centric vision and that recognizes female talent and motherhood as central economic assets. The Holy Father affirms that we live in a world that is largely deaf. We, women of the economy of Francesco, we will not wait for the world to change, but will bring the change to the world. We will engage with companies and communities, as we are aware that no one has to be alone. No one is saved alone. The Holy Father in Fratelli Tutti highlights how St. Francis heard the voice of God. He heard the voice of the poor. He heard the voice of the infirm, and he heard the voice of nature. May the seed that St. Francis planted grow in the hearts of many. So to conclude, may the seed of St. Francis open our ears, activate our hands, and make us act inspired by the hope of a more fair, just, and inclusive world. Thank you.
Thank you, Diletta. Thank you very much for your contribution. Yeah, I think you underline very well, even through the project proposal, how justice is a very integral part of fraternity. And we said it before, charity demands it. It cannot operate effectively without it. So, as you said, injustice is nurtured and very often by the virus of individualism. And we certainly need to act together as a community to try to fight it. And no one is saved alone. The Holy Father says it very clearly. Your words reflect a very strong call for action. And also, I think, a very deep desire for a renewed sense of solidarity. And I know that Olena shares that desire. Am I right, Olena?
I definitely do. Thank you. In the chapter 3, Envisaging and Engaging the Open World, the Holy Father makes special emphasis on the value of solidarity. He refers to the New Testament, where is described one fruit of the Holy Spirit, agathosine. It's the Greek word that expresses attachment to the good, pursuit of the good. And the Holy Father explained that it suggests a striving for excellence and what is the best for others, their growth and maturity of health and cultivation of values, not simply material well-being. Our society needs to assure that values are passed on and cultivated in new generations. Otherwise, our modern economy will remain filled with selfishness, violence, corruption, indifference, and individualism. Solidarity is normally seen under two complementary aspects: that of social principle and an authentic moral virtue, a firm and preserving determination to commit oneself to the common good. That is to say, the good of all, of each individual, because we are all really responsible for all. This definition was formulated by John Paul II in 1988. Solidarity rises the rank of fundamental social virtues, since it places itself in the sphere of justice. And solidarity is the virtue that for excellence to the common good, and it's found in commitment to the good of one's neighbor and with readiness in the gospel sense to lose oneself as for the sake of the other instead of exploiting him, and to serve him instead of oppressing him for one's own advantage. In the Encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis firstly addressed the people who are responsible for education and formation and cultivation of solidarity as moral virtue firstly and social attitude. And we are these people who he addressed, women. And he says that the first place where the values of love, fraternity, togetherness, and sharing, concern, and care for others, they are lived out and handed on in families. This particular attitude and devotion with which a mother teaches her children is unique and truly beautiful. Family is the place where the new economy can be born and brought up. The values of freedom, mutual respect, solidarity can be handed on from tender age. And we, Women for Economy, as a village, have been working since April on concrete ways to do it and concrete responses to the call of the Holy Father to rethink the economy. The proposal I would like to talk about right now is EOF for All. It's an educational concept that starts with the small course for children and their parents together, where they can come together with pedagogical accompaniment to first understandings of vocation, of basic economic principles, to live them in their life. So we have proposed a course for small children of 5-6 year old, and then for bigger ones, 8, 9, also for teenagers, EOF teens. They need special attitude. They need special kind of formation. The other courses that should be developed are EOF Essential, that would help vulnerable groups to get orientation in the market of labor and help people to get the first basic understandings in economy, and EOF Advanced for people who are economists and who are professionals. And these kind of courses, they all intended and all course the need of EOF Academy that would function on the base of EOF focus groups that would elaborate empirical data and create the framing for Economy of Francesco. Also, we were proposing, and we are proposing, the recognition of EOF animators that would bring the spirit of the Economy of Francesco to people and inspire others. I hope that values and attitudes that are formed at a very early age under a special care of a parent, they might really grow into trees and give fruits in future. And this might be an effective way of planting a seed of hope in our society and economy in general, as mentioned the Holy Father in his presentation of the Global Compact on Education. In the Encyclical letter, the Holy Father also mentioned the term solidity that is so typical for women, born the unconsciousness that we are responsible for the fragility of others as we strive to build a common future. Solidarity finds concrete expressions in service, which can take a variety of forms in an effort to care for others. And service in great part means caring for vulnerability, for the vulnerable members of our families, our society, our people. And so many women set aside their own interests and desires, serving and caring for common home for those who are the most vulnerable. And in this context of solidarity, as mentioned in the Encyclical letter, I would also like to mention that female solidarity has got a variety of its forms, differing depending on the local needs and cultural traditions. But any of these forms is a manifestation of an effective way of confronting individualism and acting in terms of community. Isn't that what all of us should do?
Yes, Olena, I think so. That's what we should do. And I want to thank you for your focus on solidarity as a value. And I want to thank you as you know, your focus on solidarity as a value, which is expressed also through education and in many other concrete ways by women, as you said. Solidarity, as you said, finds expression in service, in responsibility for the fragility of others, for the ones who are weaker, for the ones who are wounded, realizing also that sooner or later in the course of our human existence, we are each in need of both receiving and giving care. So that's a call for all of us. And in many ways, I think the solidarity strengthens the paradigm of care that we mentioned before against the technocratic paradigm. A paradigm of care that can be applied truly to any field of our individual and communal work. I believe you agree with me, Sarah, don't you?
Yes, I agree with you, Sir Petrini, because Pope Francis in Fratelli Tutti invite us to become world's neighbor, such as the Good Samaritan, the parable he present on the chapter 2. And the Good Samaritan was this man who stopped when he saw an abandoned man on the wayside. And that's the invitation, because we all share responsibility to help those who are wounded and care for the needs of every woman and man as we pursue the common good. But now the problem is the economic system drives the technocratic paradigm that promotes market freedom and an infinite growth with poverty and inequality, but without integral human development. So the economic system places the individual interest at the center of social well-being of others instead of the common good. And these have the consequence of that we become indifferent to the pain and the suffer of others who are around us. An example of it is what happened during the pandemic. The World Bank in its last report said that people who are already poor and vulnerable before the pandemic are the most affected, included women. Uh, and these people have some characteristics like lower level of education, insecure employment, and lower skill occupations. This is a big problem. And also women has the situation of the lockdown, it increases the domestic and sexual violence. And the other face of the coin is that the fortune of billionaires raised almost 27% during the global lockdown, especially April and June. So this is a face of inequality, because while 100 million people become poor this year, a reduced group become more rich. So the problem here is like Pope said in Laudato Si, that the economy just accept everything who brings benefit, but it doesn't care for the negative impact on human beings. But there is an alternative, there is a way here, because we can change the horizon, and it's possible with the paradigm of care, which is a new economic model proposed by the Pope Francis, where we can build a fraternity and the fruit of community based on equality and brotherhood. This is really important because this fraternity lead us to transcend our own limitations, borders, and barriers in a world that reject migrants. Also, a fraternity that creates community between neighbors and not just associates or business partners. And also a fraternity where we acknowledge the worth and dignity of every human being. So here it's necessary a better kind of politics, especially as Pope Francis suggests the political charity as a way out, not only as an expression for the intimates, but also charity. It's present in macroeconomics relationships and in social and economic circles. So this is really good because we need bold action and making difference with small gestures of care, promoting education, or building bridge, or creating jobs. This is the exercise of the political. And this care paradigm and political charity are also an special care for women, because with the sensibility and intuition, we can make room for others, listen, have dialogue, respecting different points of view, and change the direction of our look. Presence of women in society will help to show the contradiction present in the economic system, as we can see with the only two women who have won the Nobel Prize in economics, Ostrom and Duflo, who are focused on common goods and poverty. So to conclude, uh, we propose that we can create together a polyhedral reality. And why don't we highlight the feminine genius, as John Paul II mentioned in his letter in 1995, and lead the church and the society along the paths of hope and along the path of the Good Samaritan.
Thank you, Sarah, very much for your reflections. Thank you very much. Care at the root of fraternity, a fraternity that creates community, not just business partnerships, both in economics and in politics. And certainly the feminine genius can contribute to lead this path of change, promoting leadership that is more sensitive to social charity at a macro level. So in this process, however, one essential factor that you, Sarah, also stressed very well is an open, honest dialogue between individuals. Effective communication really becomes crucial. Luca, now you work in communication, and in Fratelli Tutti, the Holy Father openly claims that we do need a renewed way of communication. Can you help us with some insights on this topic?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Because Economy of Francesco is an event that will help bring us together and allow us to meet one another and eventually enter into a covenant to change to this economy and to give a soul to the economy of tomorrow. And about communication, these are the words of the Holy Father in his official letter of the 1st May 2019 for the event Economy of Francesco. Yes, this event. In the Italian version of his letter, the Holy Father uses, not by coincidence, the term pact, which comes from the Latin word pactum, derived from pacisci, which means negotiate, and has the same root of pax, pacis, that's to say, peace. A pactum that is intrinsically possible only by approaching, speaking, listening, looking at, coming to know, understand one another, and to find common ground. And all these things are summed up in one word: dialogue. If we want to encounter and help one another, we have to dialogue, as explained in the Encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti on fraternity and social friendship. One, to use the words of the Pope, in which not only believers, but all men and women of God will, beyond of difference of creed and nationality, can participate, inspired by an ideal of fraternity. Because the difference is enriching. Dialogue. Dialogue because words are not innocent. Never. And they are important. Sharing, because share is not just a button, and it is not neutral. Never. That's what the economy of Francesco means for us. Because dialogue and sharing among parallels and even among opposites are what guided us in our path and what tie us together through our proposal in Women for Economy. Women and men, fathers and mothers, community and single, law and ethic, institution and society, public and private, small and large, leaders and collaborators, believers and non-believers, youngs and elders. Through the spreading of information, experience, joys, failures, success and pains, with an horizontal communication among peers, vertical, top-down, and ascending, bottom-up. Women and men. Women with men. Women between women with men, and between men as a people, to be the force of the nature that dialogue, share, and create. Again, dialogue, share, and create. Because if we consider ourselves alone, we are just single grain of sand. But if we consider our experience and daily action, our testimonies and words, also through our posts on social networks, we are the bridge that could connect the different parts of the world, change the perspective, And today, here, we are witnessing it because dialogue are made through words and also fact, always being reflective, deep, proactive and positive, always improve awareness by sharing our stories, also through instrument by Infosphere Society, like videos, podcasts, posts, and stories. Because we exist online, offline, on land, for and on life, as claimed by Luciano Floridi, professor of philosophy and ethics of information at the University of Oxford. Tradition and innovation. Innovation and tradition. And is the key, not or. Because we ourselves are media too. Because we are the factor that can change the world. Because we are change makers. Because we are the specific weight of the future that, through our dialogue in diversity, cement the bridge that binds us to the best part of us that does not exist yet. But as change makers, we will be able to build it. We will be able to be together, all together, forever. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you very much. Your words were definitely not neutral, but full of meaning for us today. And thank you also for being with us in our village, because this allowed us to practice our social dialogue between men and women in a very concrete way. So of course, communication is a key tool for dialogue and a key tool to build bridges, as you said, to connect at a deeper level, to share among opposites, to shift slowly from the globalization of indifference towards the globalization of fraternity. And thank you again. I really want to thank you again, Diletta, Olena, Sara, because you've been so committed to this process, so insightful, offering a feminine perspective that is not just theoretical, but that is really, truly, fully lived and expressed in your studies, in your work, in your personal lives. So I think we all need to thank also Federica Nalli, the coordinator of our village, Women for Economy, who has been supporting us and guiding us all along. And once again, my thanks to all of you who have been with us today. We believe that our common study of the Encyclical Fratelli Tutti, preparing for this event, was truly for each one of us a very concrete opportunity to participate in the process of education that must be ongoing to bring forth a very significant change within our society and especially within our economy. So our dialogue of today does not mark a closure for us, but rather the beginning of a new phase. And we want to invite you all to continue to meet with us if you wish to reflect on Fratelli Tutti, and especially to share with us the many ways in which women throughout the world are really playing a very vital role in the unfolding of this process of change for universal fraternity and a truly human-centered economy. So from here, we move into the future together with great hope. Thank you again.